Should you live with someone before you marry them? Hey guys, what's up? It's me, Lori, and it's Friday, so it's time to talk about relationships. Today I want to talk about a topic that is really for anyone out there who is of an age where you're in a serious relationship that could potentially lead to marriage, and you're wondering whether it's a good or bad idea to move in with that person before you do take that big step. There's a lot of people out there who see living together as kind of a trial run before marriage, and there's also a lot of people who think that it's a really bad idea because, you know, once you live together, the marriage doesn't make that big of a difference anymore. But I don't really agree with either of those things. If you're in a relationship with someone that you think you could marry, I don't think it's necessary that you live with that person exactly. But I do think it's really useful that you have had experiences living with at least someone that you were in a relationship with. To share a home with somebody that you're not romantically involved with, so not your parents and not just a roommate, teaches you a lot about yourself and about being an adult. It teaches you how to share responsibility, to peacefully work around someone's schedule, and to compromise around living habits. It also teaches you very basic things like how to deal with a woman who's going through PMS and how to deal with someone's temper that lasts longer than yours and resolve a fight. I think one of the most important lessons for all of life really that I learned from living with previous boyfriends is that everyone has a good and bad side. It sounds like an obvious thing, but I think before jumping into those relationships, I always thought, well, maybe I would find someone who was perfectly compatible with me. And maybe idealistically just figured that if someone didn't get along with me perfectly, it's probably because we didn't belong together. But what I realized from living with people for years at a time is that everyone's got bad days. You could be the perfect match ever. You could be soulmates, and that person is still going to run into a rough period, or you guys are going to butt heads over something. It could be trivial, it could be really important. And it doesn't mean that that's the end of your relationship. It just means that you've now seen that person for everything that they are, not just the good stuff. At the same time, I think you kind of learn how to pick your battles, and that is a huge thing that I think didn't just take living with someone to learn, but it also took age and experience. There were things in my earlier relationships that I felt were just earth-shattering issues or deal breakers or things that were worth screaming and fighting over. But once I was with someone over a longer period of time, I realized that you can't fight a war over every single little thing. You have to get over some things that aren't that important. And as you live with someone, you start to learn what those very important things are and what things are kind of minor. You spend a period of time figuring out the things that annoy you about them, the things that you never even realized you cared about, like pee on the toilet and the toilet seat not being left down, or wasting money on gadgets or shoes or whatever the case may be. And then once you get over that period where you realize that those things annoy you, there's a whole other period of learning where you learn how to get over it, basically, because you might say, you know what, I hate pee on the toilet and I hate dirty bathrooms and I hate wasting money, but this person is more important to me than those problems. I don't think that getting married without having these experiences is necessarily going to doom you from the start, but just realize that it's going to be a big learning process. It's going to be like going through relationship 101 with the person you're spending the rest of your life with. And you will have those moments where you question yourself and whether you chose the right person. You'll probably think that you've got the worst spouse in the world. Or that maybe you just picked a person who you're not compatible with. And it'll be really hard to distinguish between whether that's the truth or whether you've just run into a typical relationship roadblock that you might run into with anyone. Before you bring up the D word or start thinking about calling lawyers or really questioning your choice for a relationship, just remember that no matter who you're with, there's always going to be some kind of difference, whether it's geographical, financial, political, or whatever. And you're not necessarily missing out on someone out there who's perfectly matched to you. I would say that when the time comes for me to decide whether or not to marry a person, it won't really matter to me so much whether I have lived with that person before, because I feel like I've had enough experience by this time in my life that I understand what it means to compromise and all that other stuff, and I really know about my own priorities, and I understand myself well enough to enter a marriage being pretty open-minded. But I think I would reconsider marrying a man who's never had a serious relationship and lived with another woman before, because I'd be dealing with, I think, the equivalent of like a starry-eyed teenager who believes that romance and love are supposed to solve solve all problems and who, you know, wouldn't be really mature about sharing space and things like that. And I honestly don't know if I'd want to be the teacher in that situation because it would be a really risky, thankless task. After living with a couple of people, I think you'd see that the survival of a relationship doesn't depend on whether you agree on everything or whether you can totally avoid bad moments. What it does depend on is whether you can get through those bad moments together. Okay, mushiness over. I'll see you guys next week. Bye.